Hi everyone, my name is Billy and you are listening to Humans of Authenticity. Our guest today is Justin Reyes, Manager of Member Engagement and Events at the Latino Corporate Directors Association. He's also an Association Forum's 40 Under 40 honoree and a DELP scholar in my class. In addition, he's an actively engaged volunteer in various nonprofit organizations and dedicated a lot of time to make a difference in the community around him. Welcome to Human of Authenticity, Justin.
Thank you, V. Thanks for having me today.
Would you like to introduce yourself to our listener first?
Of course. So howdy, everyone. My name is Justin Reyes. I just recently shifted portfolios at the Latino Corporate Directors Association. So I'm now the membership manager. We recently hired a new membership director, Leslie Gambrell Rivas. Under her leadership, we're working on the recruitment, retention, and the engagement of members within LCDA. I was born and raised in a small town in South Texas, just south of San Antonio. But today, I call Charlotte, North Carolina home, along with my wife and niece, and our two fur babies, Bailey and Begonia. Thanks for having us, V.
Could you share 3 things that you love about yourself?
Yeah, I love that I am curious. I always want to just know how things work or why things are the way they are. I love networking, meeting new people, and through the extension of meeting these people, learning from their experiences. It's kind of like a live storybook. And the third part is my passion. I have a lot of love and passion around the friends I've made and the profession we have. I would say in the last 8 years, I've really been passionate about intentionally exploring, advocating, and being the best Latino that I can be, because collectively those experiences that I've had have been amazing. But also, as I learn more about other Latino communities, flavors, experiences, ideas, that passion part, networking, and curiosity are all things about me. And that's how it's gotten me into different spaces, whether for work or volunteering. Ultimately, it led me into applying for the DELP program, which is how I've met many amazing association professionals, whether it's Eduardo or Dr. Bailey or yourself. It's just been an amazing experience the last year and a half, especially with y'all.
So cool. When you say you're striving to be the best Latino you can be, how do you define a version of the best Latino for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll rewind it a little bit. I grew up in a small town in South Texas, so it's essentially a border town. And I was just talking to someone yesterday about it. I was born and raised in America, but it had a more Mexican-American flavor to it. The community was predominantly Latino. And I think when I was young, I felt like a hobbit. I don't know for those viewers if y'all are familiar with Lord of the Rings and all the different characters, but for context, I felt like I was living a life as a hobbit. Very simple. We didn't do much adventure for the longest time. I guess up until I was 16, I didn't really leave a 4-hour radius. It was all spent in that little area. So with that, I had this negative perception of being Latino. It wasn't something that I really understood how to celebrate. I equated it with being a challenge. I hate to say this, but I felt like because I was Mexican American, yeah, I felt like I equated to being poor. And that's just not right. So fast forward, as I got older, went to university, Texas A&M University, whoop. But more importantly, I was getting further and further away from home as I progressed in life, graduating from Texas A&M, having the opportunity to do a internship in DC, and ultimately after that teaching in Dallas, Texas as a agricultural science teacher. I felt like I was disconnecting from my heritage. And so about 8 years ago, when I took on a opportunity with the National Association of Home Builders, I moved to Kansas City with my wife. It was 3 or 4 months after our wedding. It was a new city, a new experience, a new role, getting away from working in the classroom and more focused on component relations, working with chapters, living in that sphere of home building. But through it all, there was always something that felt empty. And it was around that time, 2016, 2017, that I felt like I needed to intentionally explore my Latinidad. In Kansas City, the Latino population probably around 15%. So it's not a very big community. And so being so far away from home, I wanted to connect with other people who could empathize or just relate to some of the lived experiences I had. And it started with this young professional group, the Young Latino Professionals of Kansas City. And it was in this group where I grew professionally. I had the opportunity to exercise leadership, hone in on my skills with membership, recruitment, retention, development work. I mean, all these different pillars of association management, I essentially had the opportunity to practice and exercise those things. And at the same time, explore my Latinidad. And man, as soon as I got on that role, it was just like, okay, what's next? What can I do next? And so it was volunteering with the Greater Kansas City Hispanic Chamber, showing up to events. I think that was really the big thing for me, was showing up and being in those rooms. And it made me ensure that I had the opportunity to voice myself as a Latino around various spaces. And then ultimately, as I got engaged, Mattie Rhodes Cultural Center, then I get to just live that Latino experience with other Latinos that resided in Kansas City. And there's so many amazing experiences. Like, I had a chance to do a couple of legislative days in Washington, D.C. with the Hispanic Chamber. And there's this one event we went to with the Latino Coalition, where we had the vice president and all these cabinet members who spoke there. But the one that resonated with me most is there was a Lifetime Achievement Award bestowed upon Vicente Fernandez, a cultural icon. And so I had an opportunity to hear him sing El Rey, which is a big song in the community. And I had never seen him in concert. So just short of seeing him in concert, I had that opportunity to be in that room, intimate space with 200 other people. And it was all tied in with us coming together, having conversations, and celebrating our cultural background, but also advocating on behalf of small business owners in the Kansas City area, or regionally within the Kansas and Missouri areas. It collectively helped me discover what it meant for me, which was, as I said, just showing up, being the voice, getting your hands in the masa, just being active wherever I can, whether it's filling ice chests or sharing my story with federal legislators or mentoring other young Latino students. It was all about intentionally connecting, celebrating, and trying to open the door for others where they may not know where that door's at.
I'm loving that. And I can sort of see how your story evolved from the very beginning until today. There are two things I'd like to pick up for a bit more discussion. So towards the end of your story, you talk about the revelation that you show up to an event, and I'm hearing that you're more comfortable voicing yourself as a Latino. Is there a story, or can you elaborate the story around that for me? Or can you give a scenario comparing yourself before and after that sort of revelation for us?
Yeah, so it's probably a zigzag here, but when I started working, I think it was when I started working as a teacher. So I did this internship in DC in the fall of 13, but it was shortly after that, in January of 2014, where I took on a role as a agricultural science teacher, that I realized that how I stood out, right? Especially the students, the Latino students. I think they really enjoyed the fact that they had an educator who looked like them and shared similar experiences. So I guess in that sense, that was something that I appreciated. But I think fast forward in 2016, when I joined the National Association of Home Builders, which was a large trade association of about 140,000 members, right? And something like 700 chapters around the country. And my little slice of the pie was the Midwest and 8 states and about 110 chapters within those areas. But that first year of travel, of visiting these Home Builders Association chapters or leadership, their networking events, I was, I guess, a bit uncomfortable because I would often find myself either one of maybe a handful, if that, like Latino members and leaders. And so I guess from there, that's when I realized that, this 9 to 5, I could do what I can, be that voice that I can, whether it's providing feedback to membership services about, well, are we creating resources that are translated to Spanish? Because especially in like that Texas area, the workforce is robustly Latino. And so are we providing resources for our members that they can relay back to their staff and benefit from these resources that are put in context Spanish for them? But anyway, so that was my 9 to 5. And so that's when I started like, well, I'm not getting my cup filled there. So that's when I started dabbling into volunteering and being involved with these Latino centric groups and taking the lessons that I learned from NHB, when you talk about advocacy or networking, professional development, all of these different things, I took those lessons learned there and I exercised it or used those competencies in the volunteer work, which is talking about like the recruitment, right? So, I would lean heavily on the experiences I had at NHB. And I think because of that, not only was I trying to hone my craft, but at the same time, I was trying to be a part of uplifting a community of young people with a group that had no staff. It was volunteer led, volunteer driven. And I think through the 5, 6 years I was part of YLP and some of these other organizations, I got to learn from these leaders and listen to their stories, the lessons, the history of Kansas City that I think ultimately led me to have a better understanding that if you're not top of mind, then you're not part of the conversation. So with ASAE, although I don't live in the DC area, I do find that it is extremely important to be present, to participate, and to show up, especially like events like our ASAE Advocacy Day, where we meet with our federal legislators and we advocate on behalf of the association community. I hope that answers that question that you just asked.
No, of course, I can really see you start feeling proud, and I can see you start putting a lot more intentions into the work, especially the resource creations and translation. What was your proudest achievement during your time with the young Latino professional of Kansas City?
Oh man, we did a lot, so much. I think the culmination of all the work that we did together, the last 2 years I was involved with YLP, I had the opportunity to serve as president, which was an amazing experience, but it was also a mindset, right? This community of young professionals, that experience was there, but the work we did as not only the board, but the volunteer group resonated with what the impact would be like for our members. So it was almost like I got to be a mini executive director, lots of work. But my proudest moment, I would say, is not just the development of young people, but encouraging them and providing them a space to, if they have a personal fitness business, how can YLP support you, put you in the spotlight? And at the same time, how do we mutually benefit, like doing workouts together or like painting. There was a painting class we did where Melissa, she was really interested in doing something. So we gave her the space and the time and we promoted it. It was a lovely outing at the park, painting and just laughing at our different paintings. But the proudest moment was that last year, it coincided with the 15th anniversary of the Young Latino Professionals of Kansas City. And so with the goal, it was like, okay, every 5 years, YLP does a celebration, a reflection. It's purposeful about bringing together the people impacted because YLP links leaders, it impacts communities. That 15th year anniversary was an amazing thing was we put together this goal. We're going to do a celebration, which we intimately called our quinceañera. in the Latino community, or maybe it's more the Mexican community, a quinceañera is a celebration of a coming of age, celebrating this moment in this young person's life. And so, with that said, our goal was to challenge ourselves to throw an amazing event, bringing amazing people together in an effort to fundraise and bring big dollars into YLP's budget to perpetuate the work and the impact that not only YLP has, but the programming and access that it extends to its members. And so it was a very long year when you talk about organizing an event of scale, finding an event space, dealing with vendors, negotiating with vendors, fundraising those dollars, those in-kind contributions. And I didn't do that alone. In fact, it took a big group of people. It must have been something like around 20 to 30 individuals who took on different roles. And my really good friend, Braulio Rivas, who is currently the Young Latino Professional Kansas City president, tapped him to chair our Quinceañera Planning Committee. And collectively, through his leadership and the volunteer service and the ambition we had as a group, we were able to fundraise an incredible amount of money. And for context, YLP's annual budget, sometimes $2,000 to $3,000. So we had to get really crafty with how we spent those dollars. But at the end of the day, after the quinceañera celebration, we were able to net something like $20,000. I mean, this was after expenses. Yeah, it was crazy. And what was really cool about it too was, for a lot of these volunteers, this wasn't something they had done before. So in essence, something I was proud about too is what we were developing these strengths of these people who use YLP as the reason to get this experience, to put together a program, to fundraise. And I believe that because of this experience, as they move on to get involved with other organizations, whether it's in the community or their profession, they have built up this experience, this muscle of volunteer work that I think could benefit other groups. And I think on top of the monies that we raised and the amazing event that we had something like 200 people, we were able to create volunteer leaders that I'm hopeful will continue to drive in Kansas City.
This is so cool. I can start seeing you firing up. I want to stay with this story a tad longer.
Okay.
So during that 1 year long of celebration, was there any moments that you remember the most?
One moment that I remember the most.
Or if you come across an individual that you still remember the interaction until today?
Yeah. I just, as you say, I get the flashbacks of these like pictures, right? Just seeing people laughing, celebrating. I was very privileged to have the platform to share the story of YLP and the importance of it, because we all had this lived experience. But it's odd. I was just thinking about this individual. He was our treasurer, Jaleel Allen, who now serves in the Marines, an amazing young man. Jaleel was someone that I met through YLP, and later on he jumped in and became a board member. His was the Young Latino Professional Award, and I remember being in the restroom with him. We were fixing our hair and stuff because we were about to go on stage and talk. And I didn't want to catch Jay by surprise when I announced that he would receive the award. So I remember in the restroom, I was like, all right, Jay, I got to tell you something, be calm, but I want to let you know that we selected you for this honor. And because you put in so much work, you're always thinking about what can we do next? Being an idea guy, he was our money guy, like, how are our financials? But anyway, I remember, the shock in his face, like, wait, me? Really? And it was a very proud moment. Sure, I was president, which was great, but it was more than that. It was being able to put the spotlight on these individuals who day in, day out, they're 9 to 5, they're 5 to 9. And each of them did some sort of work within the Hispanic community. Bill's worked for an attorney's office that specialized with like immigration services. So you talk about diverse clients, they had tremendous amount of Latino clients. But anyway, these individuals, they're 9 to 5 and they're 5 to 9, was all centered around improving, advocating, and providing resources for the Latino community in Kansas City. I was able to forge a really great relationship with Jay. I think of him from time to time, and I hope he's doing well out there.
That's such a very nice story. Let's move to the keyword conversation. So I provided you a list with 12 keywords to choose from, and which one do you select for our discussion today?
Yeah, and I love the number 12, by the way. That's my graduation year. So the word we picked was adventure.
And why adventure?
Adventure. As I mentioned earlier in our conversation, this idea that I was a hobbit, right? Just lived a very calm, simple life centered around family, right? Centered around this small town. I grew up in a very rural town of like 3,000 people and a very small, I think I had a graduating class of 70 students, and most of them, since like pre-K. So I picked adventure because I believe that having that experience made me into a better membership person. When you talk about engagement, intentionally recruiting, always just trying to do more for the community, right? All my heroes were in books. And I remember in high school, I loved to compete in that like academic UIL is what we called it, Universal Interscholastic League. Anyway, history was my forte. And I got a chance to win district and go to state. But when I talk about my heroes were always books, and I was a big bookworm growing up. I mean, I would read so much. There was this book, 1776, by David McCullough, that was basically what was my junior year in high school, what was the theme of that competition, along with a few other resources. But just learning the history of our country and the ambition of these individuals to overcome such a huge challenge of declaring independence, but also navigating and how to defeat a much larger global presence. It made me want to go to DC. Right after graduation, I had a chance to do a public policy internship in Washington, DC. I have just tremendous amount of respect for our federal legislators and the election process. Fast forward, when I was in college, I'd seen this program. It was something I always wanted to do. It was ultimately in my senior year that I decided this is it, right? I'm graduating. There's not going to be any other chance to do this. So let's go for it. And I got a chance to get selected for it. And what was really great about that experience was my undergrad was agriculture science. So, and I worked on a ranch with my dad. Anything agriculture, that's the background of my family. We were ranchers, we're farmers, cowboys, all that good stuff. But that internship experience was amazing because it wasn't just boots and jeans, it was agriculture in suits and ties, right? And conversations in these great rooms on Capitol Hill. So with that, I kind of got this taste of like, wow, I can do this too, right? I am here writing notes, attending meetings, being a part of the organization, which was the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, or NASDA. And then from there, I did teach for a couple of years, but I wanted to be able to scale the impact that I had professionally. It was amazing those 2 years with I had something like 200 students that I had each year in the program. But anyway, I wanted to have the opportunity to scale my impact. So that's when I joined the National Association of Home Builders, and I was traveling 80% of the time visiting the Midwest, visiting like San Antonio and Grand Island, Nebraska, and everywhere in between. And I really enjoyed it because my curiosity, my interest in networking, and the passion for the work that we did, home building, allowed me to have this adventure, right? Personally, professionally, doing my work. How can we serve and better impact our chapters? But also personally, I had a chance to explore these different communities, right? Have their foods, learn their conversation. It was really awesome. Because I worked there, I had access, I had ASAE membership.
Hmm.
And so that's when I started dabbling into ASAE, going to a couple annual meetings, leaving the country for the first time in 2018 to the Toronto conference. And that was amazing. Meeting the people in that city, very welcoming folks. But more than that, I had a chance to volunteer, which bled further into the advocacy day that I mentioned and participating as a volunteer of committees, micro, macro, and being part of programs like that has allowed me to go on this adventure. On my LinkedIn, I used to have this headline. It was like an association management professional navigating through the seas of association management. That's how I felt about our industry. My craft was what I knew, membership, And because of it, I had a chance to learn more about home building or learn more about the commercial construction industry or learn more about ag policy. And then to this day, being a part of an organization and a team that is intentional about helping Latino executives reach parity in corporate boards. And that's an adventure in itself. Every day we have these calls and meetings with members or potential members. And it's kind of like living a page out of Hispanic executive. For whatever reason, very blessed to have the opportunity to have this role. I get to meet other Latino leaders that are doing some amazing things professionally, but more than that, they're doing amazing things for the Latino community, being the voice. And I think to that point, a lot of these members that we have are leading efforts, whether it's with the Latino American Smithsonian Committee and Museum efforts or Hispanic Development Fund, the Association of Latino Professionals for America, the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. The list goes on and on of these amazing organizations that these members are a part of or have led. It's just a really amazing adventure to be an association management professional and to learn about these industries and better understand them. And I think it makes me a better citizen because then I become savvier and expands my knowledge and allows me to advocate more effectively depending on the topics that it surrounds.
It sounds like that internship was a defining moment for you.
I would say that DC internship, it just opened up doors. Teaching, I remember my principal, Dr. Kuchera, was extremely excited, but it was also when I was applying because I wanted that DC experience was amazing. And that's why I love DC. I don't live there, but I love visiting. But I wanted to have some sort of connection with that area, working for an organization based out of there, but having the opportunity to work remotely. And because I had that internship in my resume and I was very young, right? So not a lot of experience, it really helped me stick out from the crowd. And I think by extension, being a part of the different roles that I had, it all started with that internship. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, just moved here in November. So it's 2024. 11 years ago, I came to North Carolina through the NASDA internship and had a chance to stay a week at the Biltmore, which is an amazing experience learning about North Carolina agriculture. It was our annual meeting. So each year a state would host, and Commissioner Steve Troxler, he pulled all the stops and just put together an amazing experience centered around North Carolina agriculture and learning about the history of North Carolina and Biltmore. What's really cool is American forestry was born in the backyard of the Biltmore family. They hired an individual to develop their property, and it set forth a template that the U.S. Forest Service used to start that NASDA internship. It just exposed me to many things, whether it was going to Capitol Hill, to legislative meetings, committee meetings around agriculture, writing notes, reporting back, or writing articles to post on our website. But it was also the people that I met and the two other interns that I worked with. And I even had a chance to sit in the Supreme Court and listen to a hearing.
Wow.
I'm just a kid from South Texas who months before that, I was waking up early in the morning and working with my dad, whether it's working cattle or fixing the fence or leaks and stuff. And then at night, I was working at a grocery store, just saving up money so that I can have a good experience in DC. I love the program and I love the organization and the work that they do and the people that work there. And also I met my wife, Courtney, who was a fellow intern. And so there was so much that those 4 or 5 months that I had that made me to who I am, right? Being able to feel comfortable in telling story if I'm meeting with a congressperson, or also, being an association management professional, right? There's this whole sphere of acronyms and organizations that are out there doing really good work. And how do I get to be a part of that? To that point, that's really where my adventure started.
That is really
really was.
cool. In terms of feelings, I'm sensing a lot of excitement, the willingness to discover new things from your story. Also a strong sense of curiosity, which you shared earlier, and open-minded perspective. Having said that, when we think about adventures, right, and the reason why not many people are fond of adventure is because the doubt and the hesitance before taking the first step of the unknown.
Mhm.
Do you come across any of such doubtful experience before taking on any new adventure?
No, I don't. We have these strengths, right? I can't think of all five of them at the top of my head, but positivity
Mm,
is like a number one strength of mine. You never doubt, always positive assumption. This is a new experience or adventure, as I like to put it. So leaning in, trying to manifest a positive outcomes. Just recently moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, spent 7 years in the Midwest, was able to hone myself professionally and personally, and now moving to a new community where I don't want to say I'm starting over. I've created a network that's starting to get me connected here in the Charlotte area. Courtney and I were talking about this the other day. It's not the same as when we first went to Kansas City. It's different. We're more refined people. But like this Charlotte area, right? It's new, and with that, I can be even more strategic about where I spend my time intentionally. So in the last literally 2, 3 months, I've had an opportunity to attend and participate with our Alpha chapter, the Latin American Chamber of Commerce, and this other group called the Latin Americans Working for Achievement. And so I'm starting to understand how to network a little bit better than maybe 8, 10 years ago. So, being intentional about who I'm meeting with and sharing with them what my intent is, and by extension, getting connected with opportunities. Like literally in February, Ana Silva Ray, the former executive director of LAWA, we had a chance to connect, and she learned my story and my background, and she actually needed a panelist for this program that they do where students explore different careers and professional opportunities. And there was one centered around education, which I didn't know. There's not a lot of male Latino educators. It's been a while since I've been in the classroom, but because of that experience that I did have, I was able to share my story. And to that point, to spotlight these internships in DC, whether it's with the Smithsonian or the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. It's the caucus that represents Hispanic federal legislators. I encourage these students, if you decide to pursue education, I think it's really important for you to also explore our culture and the work that our organizations do by extent, because then you'll be able to pass that on to your students. So this adventure that I have, and I think it's all for good reason. These spaces that I find myself in, I'm supposed to be in there and I'm not always sure why, but that's part of the adventure, right? What I do, what I say, and and how I try to be a part of the process, I think is what ultimately is the fruit from this adventure. The wins, the people I meet, the influence that we can have on other individuals to explore things that maybe they've not explored before. Because a lot of these experiences I've had, I, they're not experiences that my family's had before.
mm.
So I think also what I also keep in the back of my mind is the more I learn, the more I'm exposed to, the more I can share with my family, whether it's my cousin's kids or my sister's kids, or my brother's kids too. I'm hopeful that as these young people get older, they can turn to me and ask me about these different things, because that wasn't something I could do. Early on, when I was younger, it was very frustrating, but in that venture, you meet new people, mentors, friends, sponsors, and that's where I'm able to fill the gap, right? If I have a question about making decisions in my professional career, there's folks like Juan Amador that I've had the opportunity to pick up the phone and call and navigate through those decisions. And so I would have never met any of these people without taking that first step. So no doubt, always positive. I look forward to who I will meet and who I'll learn from. I'm always trying to make friends. I guess
That's
is
awesome. And this is me visualizing the blueprint from what you just say. Whenever I think of adventure, think of obviously the road and the destination, but also the luggage that I need to prepare to bring with me. So when I'm hearing your stories, I imagine your luggage has a lot of positivity, a lot of anticipation to meet new people, openness to learning new things, And also I'm hearing a lot of reflection so that you can synthesizing your experience into stories that you can pass on. So thank you so much for sharing the context and the story around that. We are getting to the end of the episode very soon. Is there any other stories you'd like to share on adventure or anything else you'd like to share before we move on?
Yeah, I guess I would be remiss if I didn't bring up or put a brighter spotlight on DELP, the ASA Diversity Executive Leadership Program. I think this is kind of like rocket fuel in my engine. It's this adventure of being a part of this community of professionals is full octane, amazing, and intentional. And so this adventure that we started together with DELP last summer, I feel is this new chapter in my life where now I'm through the support of ASAE and the Detroit Visitors Bureau, they're giving me access to events, to programs, and a network that it's going to resonate with me throughout my life. Whatever my future adventures will be. You mentioned the luggage. DELP will be in my luggage, right? Aspiring to be an association executive, I know I won't get there by myself. I will get there with the support of the community, the DELP community. And so it's really exciting to have the love of people that I've never met before. But because of DELP, it's that rocket fuel helped me get front and center with our community, the celebration of the efforts that we did that ultimately led to us being selected, right? But it's also the lessons learned. It's not always about learning more, but ignoring less. So within our group itself, there's so many lessons that I learned, whether it's from you, V, or Zachary, or Samyuka. All of your experiences are slightly different than mine, but resonate with me because it makes me want to advocate for more than just Dinos, but for other communities. There's just such a gap in resources and parity in so many spaces for us all collectively that this adventure that I have now with DELP, I'm really excited about, but more than that, I really appreciate. And I just wanted to bring that up because unfortunately it's a limited amount of spots in the program, but you don't have to be a DELP scholar. DELP is a community, right? 200 plus individuals. Network with these individuals because they all have an amazing story. They were all selected for a reason. They are leaders and future executives. And so I feel like by networking with this group, you can tap into that innate spirit that we have of adventure, right? Going forward, taking on experiences, overcoming barriers, and scaling impact in all the communities that we serve. That I feel is an adventure that we're both privileged to be a part of.
That's awesome. Thank you for putting a plug for DELP. We're moving to the last part of the conversation. What's next for you in the coming 12 months?
What's next? I got to pass the CAE exam. So I'm hopeful. My goal is to sit for the exam in December to not only take the exam, but to pass it. I've made 2 attempts and I have come so close. But again, I didn't have DELP before that. So with the access and support of ASA and DELP, I'm really hopeful to have the opportunity to achieve that milestone in my career, to be able to proudly hold the CAE credential, just like you are here today. But aside from that, professionally, with this new portfolio with LCDA, it's exciting to get back in the reins of the recruitment process and learning the stories of these Latinos. And so I'm really excited about working on this portfolio and refining and enhancing our recruitment process. So I guess that's professionally and personally, just doing more for my physical wellness, working out, enjoying the outdoors. I don't know if you've ever been to North Carolina or at least this area, but it is beautiful. Mountains, and I think I can go fly fishing 90 minutes away. Like there are so
Nice.
many awesome outdoor experiences that I can have here that I don't want to squander this opportunity. So that's another thing that I want to do. In fact, we've gone whitewater rafting a bunch. I can't even swim. Last time we went whitewater rafting, I fell in the water, but it's just part of the adventure, right? I don't want my fear to prevent me from having these experiences and sharing those stories with my family and my mom or friends. But also within the next 12 months, I'm really hopeful to have the opportunity within the Charlotte region, North Carolina area, to sit on a committee with a local Latino organization. Really, wherever they need me, I'd be happy to sit. So those are some of the goals I have. And obviously, I think also, as I mentioned, vacation for me is these conferences, the travel. So that's the other goal too, is to take a vacation. We used to do vacations before COVID. So getting back into the groove of going to a new city, a new location, exploring and just having fun, just celebrating life, right? Because we work so hard to be where we're at. And if we don't take those moments to celebrate, to explore, to have new adventures and experiences, then what are we doing? Am I living to work and working to die? No, life's too short for that. And then lastly, if I can tie into it, I'm trying to see all the baseball parks, the Major League Baseball parks. And I think I've been to 7 of them. So if I could knock another one out this year, all the better.
That's a full list.
It is.
Talking about vacation,
Mhm.
so is there one item that you always take with you to every vacation?
Of course, of course. Courtney, I guess. I mean, I don't know. We've been to some pretty cool spots. 2 of them stick in my head. We did a week-long trip in Puerto Rico right before that
Nice.
hurricane hit them in 2017. I think it was just, mentally bringing ourselves, disconnecting from work and just living in the moment. Boston was another one. I think it's Courtney's favorite. Puerto Rico was amazing. Don't get me wrong. That was beautiful. If you've never been, you got to go. And if there's one spot in Puerto Rico that I say go check out the waterfall called Las Minas Falls. It's in El Yunque. Interesting fact, El Yunque is the only designated rainforest in the U.S. park system. So I thought that's really amazing, and it's a
That is
beautiful
cool.
waterfall. But also Boston was just the history of it, the food, the different types of landscaping out in Boston was really amazing. So I think it's just us being together and just disconnecting from work, removing Outlook from our cell phones, and just immersing ourselves in experience, chatting with the locals, trying to be a local, right? Think like a local, like where do you eat? Where do you drink? What are things that we should check out, right? I think there's no tangible thing I bring with me. It's rather just this mindset that we bring with us, and because of that mindset, these adventures, these experiences and vacations that we've had have been really awesome. So that's why I said we're long overdue for one, especially in the new state. I mean, we are now on the East Coast, so we can drive places.
Yeah.
I feel like New York City is going to be this vacation adventure that we'll have to do by the end of the year.
Yeah, New York is one of our favorites. Boston is definitely up on our list.
Oh,
And you guys are very close to Asheville, and it's beautiful up there.
it is.
Yeah.
Asheville is so beautiful. I had a chance to go to the Asheville area in February for this really awesome retreat that Lowell Applebaum puts together called Association Charette, coming together with other association professionals and just learning and asking why. And that gave me a chance to spend a weekend out there. And oh my gosh, it is so beautiful. But more than that, that adventure would have never happened without being a part of the DELP community and having a fellow DELP scholar provide me an opportunity, a seat to participate in that. But with that said, there's so beaches. I can drive to a beach. I don't have to fly to a beach anymore. I can drive to one. And the food, oh my gosh, I'm excited about visiting like Charleston and Savannah and Wilmington. And we didn't even get into like college basketball here is amazing. You talk about Duke, UNC, Wake Forest. I want to go see a football game at Appalachian State Football Stadium. There are so many amazing things to do here. So yeah, there's lots of adventures to be had what we call Queen City home.
And that's such a good way to end the episode with that excitement. Thank you again for your time and sharing your story with us on the channel today.
My name is Justin Reyes, and you are listening to Humans of Authenticity.